Hello. Hello.
All right, here we go. Confidence Conversations with Idara. And today we have Amber Tarrac with us, founder of FounderFuego. And Amber, I'll just share a little bit about you and endeavor to narrow it down and then hand it over to you to do similar. It was a delight going through your background. You know, we talked about it before. However, to actually go through and see all of what has led up to this has been a great experience. You know, you were not kidding when you talked about the background in economic development. And so that's been a strong recent experience, but in multiple facets. You know, that you had done this at the state level, working at the governor's office with economic development, and then also in Florida, and then on a local level in Escondido. So there's not only the various and multiple levels of government, but that you've done it in more than one state. So when you talk about having experience in economic development, that experience alone, and particularly a portion of it under the pandemic time, essentially really gave you a broad perspective on economic development. And then before that, having worked as a regional manager, employment training, and then different levels of support in the county of San Diego. What stood out to me also was policy advisor, having that perspective. So you'd already looked into those aspects of supported and advised how we get things done in the county before you layered on economic development. And you'd also worked in multiple facets where you were not only doing work in the county, but also community facing, that you'd done some work with seniors, and in your work as an office assistant also went from hard copy or paper to digital. Part of the reason that stood out to me was I've done some work in converting from electronic medical record, and how difficult a change of going from paper to digital can be. So your experience has spanned not only a breadth of roles, but also major changes in the way that people work when you do something like going from paper to electronic. So you've seen people go through change, you've supported the community, and you have supported businesses, which lends itself to the work that you do now in FounderFuego, where you're exposing people to various aspects of work, economic development, how they can promote and support their businesses, how businesses can collaborate, and some of the resources that are available, capital, grants, and so on. And while you're doing that, madam, you're also a lecturer, and you are teaching adjunct professor in the School of Public Affairs. So plenty that you've done and plenty that you're doing. Still, I want to make sure I didn't leave anything out of this illustrious career of yours.
Well, thank you. That was very kind for you to have that overview of my background and experience. And one thing I would also add, I think my fluency in Spanish helps me reach an even broader community. And so being able to have that public speaking experience and really the educational background and being able to offer that knowledge and expertise in both English and Spanish, I think is also kind of one of my superpowers. Along with, you mentioned, really leveraging technology, process improvements. So I really like to say my confidence, the pillars of my confidence come from, purpose, people, and processes. And that has been the, kind of the common thread of what has helped drive and grow my confidence over time, in the prior roles that you mentioned.
I could completely see that. And the process component is something that is a major advantage, because being able to relate to people, and we hadn't talked about your community facing work, which was in multiple steps of your career, being able to relate to people. I love that you mentioned Spanish, being able to reach a broader portion of the population just by virtue of being bilingual and being able to relate to people is a major gift. What you can do then with your awareness and expertise in process is to be able to bridge the communication gap that can sometimes happen, where things that are people focused might seem as if it's counter to things that are process focused, but the two can happen simultaneously. So I love your highlighting that. And you've already thrown in the word confidence. So I'll take the opportunity to ask, how would you define or describe confidence?
So I would define, at least where I derive my confidence from is the leadership expertise that I've been able to build over time in the various roles that you highlighted in my introduction here. the ability to really, kind of build on those skills over time has really helped, driven my confidence and that growth of confidence. I've also been recognized as the Latina Leader of the Year, as well as the inaugural Inclusive Champion of the Year. And so that recognition, from the community, really acknowledging, the contributions that I've made in those spaces, has really also, continued to build my confidence. Definitely founding FounderFuego and creating the Founder Fuel newsletter reflects my confidence in the vision that I have on the skills and the really leveraging the skills that I have, as well as my really diverse team, to make an impact in the community with launching the different initiatives that we're launching. My academic credentials also. So I've been formally trained and internationally certified in economic development, as well as at the state level. So I'm also a trainer at the state level for the State Association of Economic Development. And so I'm able to really, share my knowledge with business attraction and site locations, all these the information that I've gathered just from the experiences I've had across the country, as you mentioned. Really, I'm able to share that knowledge and really, it's funny, at our last training that I did with the state association, the folks in the audience were like, "Hey, we need days with you to pick your brain in this area," because it's just, there are such meaty topics, but it's like, I really want, my goal is to give back to my profession and the communities that I serve. And so that's, again, packaging all of this up has created, that opportunity for me to be confident in my skills and abilities. And also, we mentioned leveraging technology to do different things in the trajectory of my career. I'm confident that I can go figure it out, or I will find a YouTube video that explains it, or I will find the help, button or whatnot, or I'll ask somebody who I know may know that program better. And so understanding the technology and how to really implement and leverage that as part of the processes, throughout both my government experience, nonprofit experience, and private sector experience has been key, because then I can help other people navigate those technology hurdles that they're experiencing when I'm, helping them with their businesses.
I love that you've touched on a couple of key points, and it's that confidence can be twofold. There's what you know that you can do, and some of it is born of experience. It gets strengthened with experience, which is why a lot of times people will say, do it afraid. When people are a little bit nervous, just do it anyway, because there's something that comes from the experience, and that knowledge fuels you and encourages you to do more. And the other component of it is getting that confirmation and validation. Yes, you know that you can do it. Yes, you know you will, at the very least, you can find information, the things about yourself. But there is something to be said for getting that confirmation and validation from sources that you trust, or criteria that you think align with what you believe. Okay, this group has recognized me. This group whose perspective is important to me sees what I'm doing. That does help to boost the confidence. You also touched on education, and so I would be remiss if I did not point out that you did indeed have a Bachelor of Criminal Justice Administration and a Master of Public Administration. How apropos. And then the certification that you take the time to formalize these experiences and capture them in that way. County Senior Executive Credential and Fellow. I was not aware that that was a credential that was available, but you took the time to do that through the California State Association of Counties, which lends additional credibility to the work that you're doing, besides your experience and skill, and people can hear that you know what you're talking about. And then, like you mentioned, the Certified Economic Developer, International Economic Development Council's credentials. So kudos to you on that. The breadth of experience, the getting out there and doing it, all of these things build confidence for you. Can you share a time in your career when being confident made a difference?
Absolutely. And you touched on this too, that I've worked in economic development during the pandemic in particular. And so at that time, I was actually working for the city of Escondido and as their economic developer there. And so we had an opportunity to receive CARES Act, which is federal dollars that were coming down for pandemic recovery. So I was confident in my skills to be able to execute on a program to help support our small businesses. So I really, advocated for us creating a small business grant program. And, of course that, can create some risk for the city, as far as potential legal challenges and other types of risks. And so I was really confident that I was I was the only economic developer on the team. And so I was going to be responsible for administering this program. And so I lobbied for the CARES Act funding, to help as part of that. So we were able to actually establish a $1 million small business grant program.
That's
I
awesome.
partnered with one of our community partners to help with the administration of that program. And so we, worked out a deal to do that. It was a really ambitious project with really high stakes. And so it really did require me to use my confidence to navigate complex government processes, manage really tight deadlines, and also balance the diverse needs of our stakeholders. There were, of course, diverse needs across the board, and also juggle that with not putting the organization at risk for legal challenges. So I really trusted my expertise and my ability to deliver those results and my commitment to deliver results. And so I communicated the vision in a very clear way that everyone could really get on board around and rally around. I built those strong partnerships, as I mentioned, to help with the administration piece of it. And I worked tirelessly to ensure that every detail was addressed. So my confidence not only in this case helped me gain the trust of my team, but also empowered me to help negotiate and advocate effectively for the program's success. And so we were thrilled that we were able to distribute over $1 million in grants to 100 businesses within 60 days of the program launch. It was a tremendous effort and heavy lift, but we were able to do it again through that collaboration and those partnerships. That success really continued to reinforce my belief in my own confidence, paired with, of course, preparation, collaboration, and that communal success. We're able to transform those challenges into tremendous opportunities for those businesses that we helped.
That's awesome. And in some ways you've touched on this, when you are confident about something, but you have to bring others along. Whenever if there's something big to be done, you're not going to do it all on your own. It takes people. We work with and through people. It takes collaboration to make big things happen. If, however, you are not the final stakeholder, risk taker, you also have to convince others. And if they are just as strongly convinced at the beginning that it's too much of a risk, or that there's too much in it, whatever the bottom line being that they'd really rather not do it, it becomes that much more important for your expertise, but more important, your confidence to push past that to make it happen, because it really wouldn't happen otherwise. So in some ways you've touched on it, but over your career, knowing that you've sometimes had to, sell people on things, or that validation is not necessarily front loaded, what have you done, or what are the things that you do to boost your confidence when you need it?
So definitely reflecting on past successes. So I recommend to anybody, and I do this myself, of course, is keeping a win list or that kind of journal of achievements that you can and it could be a quick dot point, like, hey, did this on this date, yes, like to celebrate those wins, but also to reflect back on those big and small wins on things that you've accomplished over time. When of course, I've mentored a lot of different employees over the course of my career, and I recommend that they all keep these kind of win lists or achievement lists, accomplishments lists, because it helps when your confidence perhaps is flagging, or you experience a setback in your confidence, to kind of reflect on that win list. Also, I find, really leaning on my network. I have built a tremendous connected and engaged network over the years. And so really, talking to trusted friends, mentors, or colleagues who can really offer encouragement and remind me of my value and what I have to contribute, I think is helpful. And it could just be a quick chat or a coffee connect kind of thing that can help you reframe, kind of that, maybe if you've had a confidence setback. So those are kind of some of the ways I really tap into other people or prior accomplishments and successes to really, continue to keep a high level of confidence.
That's awesome. Reminders are so important. And I was smiling as you were saying this, because just this week I sent an email reminder to people, because that's one of the strategies that I use when rebuilding confidence, which was the reminders. It's interesting how you can lose sight of the wins, the things that you have done. And the fact remains, you did it. And whether it's your win list, and I love it when the people who you love and respect are able to reflect and really remind you that this is what you have done, and it is an immediate confidence boost. And the timing of it, part of it is because we're, recording this towards the end of the year. It's often a good time to reflect. Yes, we want to look forward at goals and so on, but not losing sight of what you have done, the wins. And I love that you mentioned just a quick dot point. Sometimes it's a quick bullet, but capture it so that you don't forget, and not to dismiss it, but just capture that kind of core component of it. Absolutely. And the people, to have the village, in a manner of speaking, to be able to remind you is a major win. And you're someone who has traveled at least a couple of different states in the United States. And in that way, would you say that you have, as a result of being in different places, that you have multiple villages, in a manner of speaking, different sources from
Absolutely.
different places and different phases of your career?
Absolutely. And I'm a global traveler and I've also lived abroad. And so I think those experiences have really shaped my confidence in figuring it out. When I lived abroad, I was a solo traveler, and I moved to Barcelona where my heritage is from. My
Mhm.
grandfather was a sculptor, and from Barcelona. And so reconnecting with my heritage and my family there was a tremendous experience, but I did that on my own, and so really, being brave and creating that brave space has also tremendously boosted my confidence because now I have a global network I can tap into, as needed and also to stay in touch. But it also taught me a tremendous amount about myself, about like
Mhm.
being independent, figuring it out. If I didn't know where to go, if I couldn't read Catalan, I'm going to have to learn it because that's what the metro system in Barcelona has Catalan,
Mhm.
and so really reconnecting with my heritage, but also, really understanding what it's like to, live in another country and live, differently than we live in the
Mhm.
United States has continued to kind of build that confidence because I recognize the resilience in myself to really figure it out. When I mentioned like figure out technology, that's only one piece of the figuring it out, right? When
Yeah.
you're traveling, and I recommend that to anybody, that's a huge boost of travel solo. It will force you to figure stuff out. It will force you to sit at a restaurant by yourself. And sometimes that's uncomfortable, right? Because we
Yeah.
want to sit and talk to somebody or have somebody there that we know, right? That's familiar. That experience, I did that for many, many years, would travel solo all over the world to different places in Europe and Mexico and everywhere. And across the country in the US for that matter. And so I think that experience, and if I encourage anybody to, whether they're doing a study abroad program or, involved in another program or some sort, or just, picking up and traveling abroad, it teaches you so much about yourself and your resilience and the capacity to build the confidence to figure it out. And so it's like a confidence scale that you just
Yeah.
kind of
Yeah.
keep pouring, filling that bucket of
Yeah.
confidence.
I used to say confidence begets confidence. It really is
Absolutely.
like a loop. And one of the things that you've highlighted in talking about this component as well is how you really get to know yourself.
Mhm.
And it sometimes it takes going beyond your comfort zone to challenge yourself beyond, but then you learn more about yourself, including your own resilience and your resourcefulness. And spending time with you makes it less likely to be conflated with other messages around you. It's really you. What of this do I like? What is it that I want? What is my preference to do? And also what am I capable of as a person? Of course, in touching on talking about international, we've touched on heritage, which was something that was bound to come up in this conversation. You mentioned about your grandfather being a sculptor, and when we talked before, your father also is an author capturing your grandfather's story. And this theme of heritage was pretty consistent in our conversation, and I wanted us to elaborate on that more, and how your heritage, and perhaps it's more so your very personal connection to it and interaction with various aspects of your heritage, how your heritage contributes to your sense of self-confidence.
Absolutely. So my heritage has really, helped me, like I said, I moved to Barcelona to really reconnect with my roots and really, at a deeper level, understand, the challenges that my grandfather went through. He was picked up in the war in Barcelona and ended up in a concentration camp in France. And prior to that, though, he was commissioned by the Barcelona to do works. So there were big sculptural works that his legacy, his artistic legacy, was extremely strong in that area. Now, he was very fortunate in this journey that, in France, the government was going through the concentration camps and taking, artists and writers and people who were in the
Mm.
creative arts, and they saved him. And so he ended up on a ship and landing in Mexico City. And he landed and said, "Oh, they all speak Spanish here, and and there's all tropical fruits. This is great." He actually set up his, yeah, right. So he said, and so there was that cultural tie of like, okay, there's some
Mhm,
familiarity
mhm,
here. While
mhm.
Mexican is a little different than Spanish, right? But there was that familiarity of language, like and cultural familiarity, but then also he found like, okay, I can set up my new studio here and I can create a life here. I understanding his journey and my grandfather's journey and the struggles that he faced really, kind of gave me a lot more perspective on the challenges my father faced. When he immigrated from Mexico City to the United States, he started a small business here in the United States. And so the entrepreneurial, spark was there with my father doing that to help, support his family as he navigated, the system here in the United States.
Mhm.
And so I feel a tremendous responsibility to represent my culture. And also, again, in my case, I'm able to speak Spanish because I grew up with it in the home and also studied in school.
Mhm.
And so that ability to be able to understand the cultures, various cultures, and I've also, of course, lived in Miami as well, which is an extremely diverse Latino culture from all over the
Yes.
world. And so being able to have those experiences to really understand my heritage and the culture, the diversity of the Hispanic and Latino cultures, I think is so important. And in fact, I led the San Diego County Latino Association, a nonprofit in the San Diego area for a number of years, and led that association through a time of transition. And we really,
Mhm.
created a strategic plan and grew the association and really
Mhm.
committed to helping our county employees as well as our community. And so I take responsibility for, my cultural heritage and really, engaging that as I move through
Mhm.
the entrepreneurial landscape.
And it's simultaneously on a cultural level and also on a family and personal level. In talking about heritage, I hear very much the cultural components, but the thread that I also started to notice as you talked about it was dealing with transition from Spain, and specifically very dire situation, really, in being in a concentration camp,
Mhm.
transitioning really out of necessity to Mexico, in the case of your grandfather, and then for your father from Mexico to the United States, a strong, determined spirit, adaptable spirit, survival, but also going beyond just survival. When you mentioned the tropical fruits, I was like, it seemed trivial, but it's just such a rich life, like a rich perspective to be able to appreciate something that might not seem like a big deal, but it's like, oh my gosh, they're tropical fruits, such an optimistic outlook on life about what's possible, and bringing the art but also entrepreneurship, because that's really what it ended up being, art and entrepreneurship. And then your father the same. And so there's heritage, and then there's a legacy in that story as well, a legacy that you're carrying forward as an entrepreneur with that familial background, and recognizing and supporting the community, taking an active role in supporting heritage as well. That was a
Absolutely.
much more robust response than I anticipated.
Well,
It's
and just to add to that, my heritage really motivates me to help pave the way for others, especially underrepresented, founders and CEOs.
Mhm,
And I know that, my actions help to inspire them to build their confidence. And that
yeah,
helps me lead with that purpose, to really help support, again, founders from underrepresented backgrounds to access the knowledge and the skills and ability to really grow their economic mobility, their wealth building for their families and for generations to come.
yeah,
So it definitely inspires me to help, again, underserved communities really find their pathway, from an entrepreneurship standpoint.
yeah. And in sitting here and looking at the logo, we've talked about what you do in FounderFuego. Another basic question would actually be, how did you come up with the name FounderFuego?
Great question. So we have we were exploring this with my team on saying, okay, we the founder fire, fuego means fire in
Mhm,
Spanish. And
mhm,
so we have a culture and an approach with our founder Phil newsletter, for example, that has a Spanglish sabor,
mhm,
called our
mhm,
con
mhm,
sazon. So we really, mix in some Spanglish vibe and a really
Yeah.
fun vibe. And that's the culture we're creating, because we really do focus on BIPOC and Hispanic communities, and of course, women entrepreneurs, LGBTQ, veterans. It's any underrepresented backgrounds. Like, we're really focused on that. But we're creating a vibe with our culture and with our newsletter and our outreach and our branding. And so when we came up with FounderFuego, it was like, okay, it kind of needs to be like a mix. We're like, okay, what kind of Spanglish vibe could we have with that? Again, we felt the fire was important. We're fueling, founders' fires. We're helping dispel founder fear, so we felt like that fire was very representative of the passion and the confidence we bring to the table, as far as really fueling the fires and igniting that spark for entrepreneurs everywhere in both English and Spanish.
Nice. I love it. And then the logo too. FounderFuego.
That's our chief learning officer has a tremendous creative design background. That was all him.
It's lovely. It's simple and it conveys, and it's there in the name, but also in the image. Okay. So final question. What's your next bold move?
Great question. I mean, we have really ambitious plans to continue to grow and scale FounderFuego. We want to really increase our impact and our reach. And so we do have some very ambitious plans to continue to scale the business. And again, we want to multiply our impact and really reach, at least 10,000 entrepreneurs in the next 18 months. And so we really have tremendous plans to help grow and scale the business to really, again, multiply our impact.
Awesome. It's great to have that number associated with it. It definitely makes it a lot easier to look back and see where it is that you've been able to hit those goals, those numbers. And where can the entrepreneurs find you, these 10,000 people that you want to reach over the next month and a half? I mean,
absolutely. So we are all over social media, and we also have our website. So FounderFuego.com. Again, FounderFuego is all one word. We're getting everybody used to that. FounderFuego.com is our website. And so you'll find a tremendous amount of resources there. In fact, we just had a wonderful grant workshop this past week for both small businesses as well as nonprofit entrepreneurs in English and Spanish. And so those are the types of trainings and workshops we offer throughout the year. So I'd encourage you to follow us on FounderFuego. You can also sign up for our newsletter on the website. So we highly encourage you to do that. That's a weekly free entrepreneurship newsletter with different grant and funding opportunities, tools, resources, information. We also amplify diverse founder stories through that channel as well. We also are on social media, so we'd encourage you to follow us on our business LinkedIn page, our Instagram, Facebook, TikTok, Twitter, Pinterest, YouTube is where we're posting our Founder Field podcast. And so to follow us on all those channels, our handle is always @FounderFuego, all one word.
Awesome. And all of that information is here included in the video as well.
Excellent.
Amber, thank you so much for the conversation, for the time. It has been great discovering beyond just really having to look at this professional background, which is rich and robust, but tying in the personal things that fuel, no pun intended, you and FounderFuego. So I'm looking forward to staying connected, learning more, and we can always revisit this conversation, especially since you've made a time-bound goal, a smart goal of the number of entrepreneurs that you want to reach. But it's been a pleasure. Thank you so much for the time, and looking forward to more that's ahead for FounderFuego and for you, Amber Tarrac.
Thank you so much.